Hello and welcome to the course Getting Started with AAI for Automic Automation Administrators. So this software was developed specifically for an important segment of our user community. You're an Automic administrator and your organization has had Automic in production for a while. You're now looking for a solution to improve management of the business end of operations, in particular with regard to service level agreements. You're aware that Broadcom has a dedicated tool called AAI, and you've decided to deploy it, perhaps for evaluation purposes or maybe as a more permanent solution. This course is designed specifically for you. Our other learning offers are AI user-centric. They're intended for the established AI community. This course targets Automic administrators who need to deploy AI alongside the scheduler and don't know where to start. This short course will help you deploy a no-frills AI to the point where you're acquiring Automic data and building your first job stream. There will be no mention of security or functional aspects other than job streams briefly at the end. As you already know, Automic is an absolute workhorse for operations, but there are tools better suited to provide supervision and analytics. For this reason, we always recommend deploying AI alongside Automic so as to reap the full benefits of a complete automation platform. In this video, we briefly describe the architecture of the AI with Automic integration. We assume that Automic is running in production. We're going to install AI alongside the scheduler on both Unix and Windows. We also require another element called the connector framework, which guarantees communications between the two components. We'll provide extensive details for installation administration. We'll show how to deploy the database, install and configure the connector framework, and finally configure the scheduler connection so that AI can source Automic to build its own data. Finally, we explain how the various components communicate and the Automic data types acquired by AAI. This is the architecture. The AAI solution supplements automation. This means you'll be starting with a fully operational Automic instance. AAI is layered on top of it. The core component of the instance is the AAI server. Its two main infrastructure elements are the JBoss web server and the database. To install AAI, we run a simple installer which creates the AAI file system and generates the assets to deploy the data structure to a database. These assets come in the form of scripts which we have to execute. It also deploys the config tool, a simple web-based UI in which we can fine-tune settings. A connection exists between AAI and Automic for data acquisition. This requires the connector framework. It's a separate software component that should be installed on a dedicated system. It has its own file system, log, and server processes. The connector communicates with the AAI server over HTTP or HTTPS and acquires data from Automic via the scheduler's web service. To be clear, AAI never sends data to Automic. The scheduler is entirely walled off from AAI communications since AAI uses data published by the automation engine to its REST API. If you're worried that deploying AAI may in some way corrupt your Automic database, that's physically impossible. We use the AAI web UI to configure a dedicated connection to Automic. The connector extracts operational data, essentially execution records, and object definitions like jobs, schedules, and executions to build the AAI data. Dynamic execution data is sourced on very short cycles, say every 20 seconds, while stable object data is extracted on longer cycles, say once a day. A complete solution involves three systems at a minimum. Automic Automation has been deployed and is running entirely independently from the AAI infrastructure. AAI is first installed on a dedicated system. We have a third dedicated system on which we install the connector framework. For any sort of production environments, we strongly discourage AAI and the components on the same system since they're both quite resource intensive. Obviously, we trust that as an Automic administrator, you're not going to install anything on the AAI server or DB hosts. We'll first install AAI, then we'll proceed with the connector. AAI should be started. At installation of the connector framework, a script runs, which prompts us to configure the connection between the connector and the AAI server. We provide several values, which will be used to populate a file called application.yaml. If your values are wrong, you can just fix them and restart the connector. We'll check the log to make sure the connection is established. Then we log into AAI and create the scheduler connection to Automic in the web UI. Various data points, such as the Automic's REST API and web UI URLs are required, along with user and password for each, so that the connector can acquire the data from Automic. Scheduler connections are not only AE instance specific, but also client specific. If you need to source data from another instance or clients, you will need to set up a second scheduler connection in the web UI, but you can use the same physical connector components. Let's talk about communications and data. As we've stated before, deploying AAI will never impact Automic, since at no point does AAI send any sort of data back to the scheduler. Also, the scheduler requires no specific configuration or alterations to work with AAI. It simply publishes the required data to the REST API, which AAI sources to build its own data. There is one value in UC system settings that we will need to change, and it does not require an AE restart. Just log into client 0, change the value from no to yes, and log out. We'll show this in the installation videos. AAI acquires data from the Automic REST API. Two data sets are needed for AAI to build its own data. First is object definitions like jobs, workflow, schedules, events, syncs, and periods. Second is execution data. This allows AAI to recreate an exact model of your operations and then deliver the benefits: analytics, SLA management, critical path management, advanced reporting, alerting, opportunities for optimizations, and more. This is the outline of the procedure. If you're considering a sort of pre-production, possibly turning into a production instance of AAI, then you definitely need to look at the compatibility matrix available on the documentation site and download the sizing worksheet to allocate the proper values for memory, for the JBoss web server, Oracle table spaces, and more. Calculations will be based on the volume and frequency of executions, data, and more. Then we install AAI. We provide procedures for both Windows and Unix. You're free to install the one you need. Then we install the connector framework, again on both Windows and Unix. Once the connector is installed and configured, it should be able to communicate with the AAI server. The initial configuration in application.yaml supports communications between the connector and AAI. Next, we configure the connection between AAI and Automic. For this, we'll log into the AAI web UI and set the scheduler connection to the Automic REST API. As explained earlier, if you're sourcing from more than one client, then you'll need a matching number of scheduler connections in the web UI. Finally, we'll go through a very basic overview of AAI features. We'll create a couple of job streams, let the system run for a few hours, and see the resulting data in AAI. We'll outline the key technical aspects of the solution. We show Windows in blue and Unix in green. On Windows, all components are controlled with Windows services, which can be set to automatic, so they start at boot. If you do so, you should never try and start either AAI or the connector manually. You'll run into port issues and cause various malfunctions. For directories, we've used default directories. On Windows, the AAI server is controlled with the Automation Analytics and Intelligence service. The application can also be started manually with a .exe, which is accessible in the Start menu, assuming you have not set to Auto Start. On Unix, the AAI server process does not have a system control enable function. To check that it started, look for the JBoss process. You start the server as root using the jaws.sh file with the startbg option for backgrounds. There's also a startfg for foregrounds if you want to see the output of the start procedure. The two web interfaces, AAI and Config Tool, use JBoss and WebSwing web servers respectively. They're accessible from the same hosts with folders AAI and main. By default, AAI uses the 8080 ports. The Config Tool is accessible on the 8088 ports. If you need to deploy TLS SSL, then we recommend signing up for the full installation and configuration admin course available in our catalog. To stop AAI, you simply Control-C out of the active prompt if you've used the foreground option. This shuts down the web server. If you use backgrounds, then execute the jaws.sh script with the stop option. For the connector framework, the service is called Automic-Connector. The default directory for the executable is Automic-Connector, and the executable is called the same. You configure connectors in the system page of the web UI. On Unix, the Automic connector can be system control enabled to start at boot. To check the process, look for Automic-Connector. To start the connector manually, if you do not have auto start, you need to be root. Use systemctl start and the service, which is Automic-Connector. Other systemctl commands are available: stop, status, restart, and so forth.